Good evening, everyone. I'm Lauren Cohn. The demand for donor eggs has never been higher. Tonight, Barbara Pinto joins us with a closer look at an industry that is fulfilling dreams and generating controversy.
If you don't know the name Theaster Gates, you soon will. Robin Robinson brings us this story about a visionary artist and his latest project. Welcome to In the Loop. Caitlyn Jenner's public transformation and the military's changing policies are drawing new attention to increasing numbers of people who are identifying as transgender, people that feel as if they were born in the wrong body. Ann and Robert H. Lurie Children's Hospital recently received a grant from the National Institutes of Health to study the long-term outcomes of medical treatment on transgender youth. This study is one of the first ever done on the population in the U.S. One of the Archbishop's top priorities is to help curb the violence in Chicago. According to the Sun-Times, the Archbishop wants to tour the city's most violent neighborhoods with our top cop superintendent, Gary McCarthy. McCarthy is now defending his position as the City Council's Black Caucus wants him gone. Joining us to talk more about that are Krista McQuarrie, editorial board member for the Chicago Tribune, Ravi Baishwal, anchor and reporter for ABC 7 Chicago, and psychologist Dr. Tiffany Sanders. Thank you all for being here.
Good to be here.
Krista, let me begin with you. Is it time for the top cop to go? And what's alarming, Ravi, that came out of all the meetings this week is we have a 21% increase in the murder rate through September as compared to last year. That's, frightening to Chicago. Let me ask you, are children too young to be making this decision? What is age appropriate? All right, let's start with the big story, the tax hike that we're all hurting from, $755 million in taxes, fees, and fines. If we break that down, we are now seeing the largest property tax hike in history, $543 million. $45 million to Chicago Public Schools, $950 a month to the garbage fee. So, Wendell, let me start with you. Was there a choice here? What made you go after this story and go after getting the video released?
It was a friend of mine, Will Calloway. He's an activist on the South Side. He's in contact with a lot of the families. He works with these families.
This isn't an easy feat, and you had roadblocks thrown in your way. What made you keep going and keep fighting for this?
It's a belief in transparency, really.
There was word out about what might be on this videotape. So there was some of it that had been disclosed, but no one had actually seen it. The family did not want it released. Did that play a factor at all in your decision to move forward?
I certainly considered it.
Alzheimer's disease is now the 6th leading cause of death in the U.S., according to the National Institute for Aging. The progressive, irreversible brain disorder slowly destroys memory and thinking skills. But now there is mounting new evidence right here in Chicago that making simple lifestyle changes can ward off the disease. 5 million Americans are now living with Alzheimer's disease, but that is just the tip of the iceberg. As the baby boomers age, that number is expected to reach 28 million by the year 2050. And that iceberg, Tom Ostreicher has his own analogy.
Now, with a person with Alzheimer's, you're a glacier. Now, when you see little things fall off the glacier, and that's how it starts out. You lose those little things. You might lose immediate memory, short-term memory, and then all of a sudden it gets bigger and bigger. And as you progress with the disease, bigger chunks fall off that glacier until there's no glacier left.
The 67-year-old retired history professor and American Civil War expert lives with his wife Marilyn in Sycamore, Illinois.
I noticed when I was lecturing in classes, that stuff I've talked about for 30, 40 years, I was missing things. And I don't, whether the students realized it or not, but I realized it. I said, wow, why did I say that? How did I miss that?
Tom was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's a little less than 2 years ago.
When I had the brain scan, they noticed that the hippocampus in the back of the brain was shrinking at a much larger rate than it would be for somebody my age.
At first, when it first happened, he would come home from school every day, though, and just sit for a long time. And I said, okay, you're just going into this huge depression, which isn't going to help you or anyone else.
So the Ostreichers started walking more and planning trips, and Tom speaks as often as he can to groups of Alzheimer's patients, hoping to inspire them to do the same.
Be open about it, be accepting of the fact, and not to hide, keep it hidden, and go about your daily life. I mean, don't just give up.
There is no cure for Alzheimer's. Tom is taking medication, but there is no sure sign for how slow or fast it will progress.
As a society, we've had such a defeatist attitude about Alzheimer's disease. We just kind of hurry up and wait, and we wait and wait and wait for someone to develop symptoms, and then we say, oh, Alzheimer's, too late, can't do anything. And I think that's exactly the wrong approach.
Dr. Demetrius Maraganori is the chairman of the Department of Neurology and medical director of the North Shore Neurological Institute. He runs the Center for Brain Health.
We're certainly the only program in the Chicagoland and in the Midwest that's taking a focus on primarily preventing Alzheimer's disease.
The program begins with a 20-question brain health quiz to help identify risk factors. Patients then become part of a comprehensive electronic record system where they're tracked and monitored. The center offers advanced testing from brain scans.
And the newest technologies we have are technologies that actually can detect abnormal deposits of a protein called amyloid, which we know is one of the telltale signs that your brain is aging and developing Alzheimer's changes.
To examining DNA, because one of the greatest risk factors for Alzheimer's is family history.
Someone who carries 1 or 2 copies of the ApoE4 gene or allele, those people have as high as a 70% likelihood of getting Alzheimer's disease. And in women carrying that genetic type, as early as in their 20s, we can see changes in the brain scan.
In fact, it's estimated 1 in 5 women will get Alzheimer's disease in their lifetime. For men, it's 1 in 10.
Estrogen earlier in life plays a protective role in women, but it may be that the sudden loss of estrogen later in life has a rebound effect that contributes.
Dr. Maraganori says physical activity outdoors and exposure to vitamin D reduces risk.
A study showed a year or 2 ago that even if you take 70-year-olds and if you get them to aerobically exercise for 30 minutes 4 times a week, their hippocampi, the memory area of their brain, will literally grow. You can measure the memory area of your brain grow simply by doing the exercise. And then if you test their performance on memory tests, it exponentially improves according to how aerobic their exercise is.
And Dr. Maraganori pushes the Mediterranean diet, which is comprised of mostly fruits, vegetables, fish, healthy fats, and whole grains.
By intervening in at-risk people, we can reduce their risk profoundly. The other point is that we can delay the onset.
And there is more new evidence. What you eat may play a significant role in warding off Alzheimer's disease. Rush University Medical Center's nutritional epidemiologist Martha Claire Morris found following the MIND diet, a low-salt version of the Mediterranean diet, significantly lowers risk. The study tracked more than 1,000 adults for an average of 4.5 years.
They had a 53% reduction in the risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. People who even had just moderate adherence to the diet had a 35% reduction in the risk.
The star of the MIND diet, berries, the only fruit specifically included because of their high levels of antioxidants and nutrients. This new information is news to Cindy and Kim Cerveni of Warrenville, Illinois, but it could prove to be very beneficial because Cindy was recently diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. She's 54.
Was having a problem getting all the pieces together to do my job, and it kept getting worse and worse. I would be leaving the house and coming back in 4 or 5 times because I forgot something. And
Cindy has since left her job and restructured her life.
now it's me to take this over and do my best for myself to keep my brain healthy and keep my body healthy and everything else. So that's my new job.
Cindy walks 5 miles every other day. She's changing her diet. She keeps her mind active by doing crossword puzzles and word searches. Her wife, Kim, is always by her side.
Anything I can do to stand by Cindy and encourage a healthy mind for her and for myself, because if I'm not healthy, I'm not a help to her either.
Know that just because you have Alzheimer's doesn't mean you can't do things. You can always try it, so always try. It will keep going and going and going until I can't go anymore.
To learn more about the Brain Health Center and other prevention programs in the Chicagoland area, including those offered by the Alzheimer's Association Illinois chapter, just go to our website at WYCC.org. It was supposed to be a simple train ride home. Kathy Cook never imagined what happened next would derail her health and her life.
It was really frightening, and all of a sudden we were flying through the air. We hit the building, came down on the track, and then flipped to the side.
Cook was thrown from her seat when the Metro train she was riding flew off the tracks shortly after leaving downtown Chicago.
When it all stopped, I was on the floor.
Cook ended up in the hospital. She underwent 2 back surgeries, including a spinal fusion, and now lives with an implanted spinal stimulator and chronic pain.
I have a battery underneath the skin.
The National Transportation Safety Board ruled operator error caused the crash. But there was more. The NTSB also said, had positive train control, or PTC, been installed, which would have slowed down the speeding train, Cook, along with 36 other people, would not have been injured. Chicago attorney Tim Cavanaugh, who represented the Cook family in a lawsuit against Metro, is an expert on railroad accident cases.
We know in Los Angeles, their commuter rail lines are on track to get this done by the end of the year. Philadelphia is on track to get it done. Metro apparently is not going to get it done.
PTC is a complex and costly high-tech system that uses a combination of GPS, radios, computers, and antennas to track the speed and location of trains. It alerts an operator of any danger ahead and can override the system should a conductor fail to act.
Jeff, how you doing, sir?
Metro Executive Director and CEO Don Orsino says Metro had planned to shut down its commuter service if Congress failed to pass an extension. Plus, Metro recently announced a 2% fare hike to help pay for the cost.
So there's not a day goes by, Saturday, Sunday, that we're not out someplace working on the further advancement of PTC.
Illinois Congressman Dan Lipinski led the push to extend the deadline by 3 years, as long as the rail companies prove they're making progress.
Some railroads have been better than others on this in terms of making progress, but it's not going to get done. But we have to make sure that we keep the railroad's feet to the fire.
But the urgency to install PTC started long before the federal mandate. The NTSB has been pushing for positive train control installation for decades and reports without it, everybody on a train is one human error away from an accident. The NTSB reports PTC could have prevented numerous deadly derailments, including this 2013 train crash in the Bronx that left 4 people dead, 61 injured. And this 2015 Amtrak collision in Philadelphia, where 8 people died, more than 200 were injured. And 2 years after Kathy Cook's train ride nightmare, at the same location, another Metro train went off the rails. 2 people died, more than 100 were injured. Kathy Cook has waited since 2003 to see an upgrade to the nation's rail safety. She, along with everyone else who rides the trains, will be waiting even longer.
I don't know what it takes for a business to actually think of people as people instead of as just ways to get money. They gave them plenty of time to change it, but they haven't, and more people will die.
For In the Loop, I'm Lauren Cohn.
I love you. I love you too.
Sometimes all it takes is a hug and a smile to brave the darkest of times.
I lost a healthy sense of pride in myself in providing for my family.
3 years ago, Adam Stieber lost his job. With 2 young sons and a wife to support, he didn't know how they would make it or if they could even stay in Rockford.
I remember that vividly, having to go down to a food pantry with my son. And he had no clue. He was just happy to be with Dad. But I knew what we were doing down there, and I knew why we were down there.
The Stieber family story is a familiar one in Rockford and had been for decades. John Groh, president and CEO of the Rockford Area Convention and Visitors Bureau, grew up here. He watched Rockford decay into high crime, high poverty, and a lack of jobs.
Through that recession in the 70s and into the early 80s, corporations that were stalwarts of the community, that had employed in individual factories thousands and thousands of people, folded up and left the community.
Rockford slowly started to rebuild. The historic buildings held promise, but its downtown was desolate, hurting the few small business owners like Karen Ellier trying to stay open.
It was just a difficult market 15 years ago to open in because it was a ghost town.
Despite some growth and change, in 2013, Forbes rated Rockford the third most miserable city in America, largely because its high unemployment rate reached 17%. That stigma sparked a community to fight even harder. Rockford's mayor, Lawrence Morrissey, says the focus turned to small business.
We're making opportunities happen for small entrepreneurs, for people who are making products by hand, people that might be part of a local farm co-op, and they're selling food and produce at the local markets. So that's been a very big success for us over the last several years right in our downtown.
Slowly, more people in the Rockford area saw progress was possible, like Vinay and Amanda Pomachan, who took a chance and brought Southeast Asian cuisine to downtown.
We have a community now that's really fighting to change the perception that we have.
And then a marketing miracle happened. Stroll on State, a 30-block winter wonderland extravaganza that included a giant Christmas tree, ice skating, a Santa parade, and an elaborate holiday light display synchronized to music along the banks of the Rock River.
Back in the day when I started out, I felt like I had to beg every single person to come in. It's not like that anymore.
Stroll on State was expected to draw about 5,000 people. Instead, in its first year, 40,000 people came. Now in its third year, more than 65,000 people flooded downtown the Saturday after Thanksgiving. And that's great news for the Stieber family, who stuck it out. Adam Stieber got a new job and was even able to buy a home.
If you would ask me 3 years ago if I saw myself owning a home today, like, I would have probably thought you were crazy. It was hard going through, but definitely worth it.
And that wraps up our show tonight. You are now in the loop. For Chris Bury and Barbara Pinto, I'm Lauren Cohn. Good night.